Hello! Hello, hello! Boy, do I hope this is working. Comments will appear here, says Facebook, helpfully. So hopefully that will happen. So yes, as usual, because Facebook is clearly having a ton of problems. We all went through that recently. I don't know if this live is going to work, but I am seeing people watching. Hello, John. 11 people watching and counting. If some of you would leave comments, that would be great, because the last time I tried this last month, I didn't actually see any comments. Hello, Miss Gail, Sarah, thank you so much. Yay, yay, hi Robin. Okay, it looks like comments are working. That is such a relief. We're back to normal, or at least as normal as it used to be. However, given the difficulties that I've had over the last couple of months, I'm really curious as to whether any of you also watch live Q&As like this with anybody else. If you do and you feel comfortable telling me about who that might be with, that would be great, because I'd love to have conversations with other authors or anybody on Facebook who does lives regularly. None of my friends, my particular friends, do. So I'd like to kind of know how other people are handling the situation, because the situation is kind of no man's land right now. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, could you let me know in a comment whether you watch YouTube Live at all? Because I'm thinking that it might be worth experimenting with that platform or switching over or something, as Facebook seems to be, I don't know, going the way of the dodo, shall we say? Anyway, this is actually none of those things. This is a launch party for Ambush or Adore, and I should have the cover art ready, but because I was busy testing things and freaking out, there's a story, everybody. I don't have this ready for you, but hopefully you all know what the cover looks like. Something like, ooh, there it is. Hello, pretty cover. Oh, hello, failure of technology. Failure of technology should be my middle name. There it is. This is what we're talking about. Yay! So some of you will have had a chance to read it. Please don't spoil it. My spoiler policy tends to be about a month at least out, but if you have spoilery questions, we can do that at another time. But if you have just sort of general questions about the universe or anything like that, we will do that momentarily. I'm gonna give everyone a chance to kind of find this video and join up and everything. Ooh, people have lots of recommendations in the comments. I really appreciate that. That's very helpful. And let me make sure. Some people asked questions ahead of time as well, so I want to make sure I don't neglect those questions. So I'm gonna have that open. There it is. Right. The saga that I have to tell you, which I'm going to preface this by spoiling it entirely and saying that, in fact, it all ended up okay in the end. But I was having a tea in my office, as you do, with a couple of author friends on Friday, and I had a brand spanking new, I thought, sealed container to bring the milk into my office. It turned out that that container did not seal. And through a freakish set of, I don't know how this happened, events, because only a small amount of it spilled, but the small amount of it that spilled inside my computer bag spilled entirely over my computer, my remote keyboard, my mouse, my backup drive, my tertiary backup drive, but still, yeah. It turns out a very small amount of milk can cause thousands of dollars in damage. The computer bricked by the time I got to the office. Nothing was happening. So yeah, that was my excitement. Yours truly is not awesome about backing up, but I had backed up recently, so yay. Also, I use Scrivener for writing in my writing project, so the book I'm in the middle of right now was all saved to the cloud, so no problems. I also have a remote setup for Scrivener, so I could immediately go to write on my iPad if I needed to. I didn't because I was too discombobulated to write, and I was panicking and trying to figure out how to get my computer repaired. I also have a secondary, an old computer from like 2013 or something that has a broken keyboard, but I can use a wireless keyboard with it. It was running like 8 iterations of software ago, but I could restore my most recent backup to that computer. It's just a little janky and slow and old and sad. There's a reason it's my backup computer. So like, it was not that huge of a crisis, but the moral of this story is test your liquid containers thoroughly before you put them in a computer bag, or don't put them in a computer bag, and have backups, have lots of backups. So I have a backup drive that is for my backup computer, and then I have a backup drive that is for my regular computer, and then I have the tertiary backup drive, which is a remote backup drive that has extra little bits of important things on it. So I was fine. But this morning I had to trot around and find myself a computer repair place open on the weekend, wandered in there, and he cracked open the case and showed me what 24 hours of milk inside a computer can do. And let me just say, it's amazing the corrosion that can occur in that short of a time. And I did do everything you're told to do, you know, like I didn't try and turn it on, I didn't plug it in, I turned it upside down so it could drain immediately out of the keyboard and all the things that like you're supposed to do, and still he cracked that case open and I was like, the corrosion was amazing. I love me some turquoise corrosion from my old days of excavating, and I'm a material scientist, so it's very interesting to me what copper, of course, corrodes to this lovely kind of blue-green color. But it was really interesting. It was like mold growth. So anyway, but it turns out my hard drive was fine. So we popped that out and popped it into an old but new to me computer. But unfortunately, that computer, which is what I'm now working from this afternoon, it has some flaws, so I'm gonna have to take it back in. But that's the saga! A saga of my milk. Milk and computers! Tea and computers, not so friendly, as it turns out. Keep the two separated. Who'd have thought? That's my witty piece of authorial device for you today. Don't spill milk on your computer, and do have a backup. So that's, but still, you know, that's gonna be, I'm still be dealing with that on Monday and the rest of the weekend and everything. So good times, good times. So yeah, the computer has weird settings, like I keep having to sign back into it because I haven't set it all to my preferences yet, but, right. So I hope you all can, hear me and see me okay. Yes, Katie, it was a very intelligent tip I just gave you. It looks, uploading and everything looks good from my end. I'm seeing your comments clearly and frequently, so I think everything should be synced and okay. So if you're having syncing problems, it might be your internet bandwidth that is in question, unlike last time when it sucked. Oh, thank you very much. Nicole has already asked a question, but I'm gonna remind everybody, if you have a question, please put a question mark at the beginning of it so that I know it's a question. However, don't start asking them yet, because I'm gonna take the ones I have saved first, and then I'll take your questions. So if you've already asked a question, the comments are going too fast, I'm not gonna waste time going back through it. So save that question and ask me again when in a moment, when I asked for it. We're only 15 minutes in, and already I feel like I've told you a story and talked for an hour and a half. It looks like from the comments that things are okay so far as the picture is concerned, so, oh, I'm so excited. Oh, it was such a crisis there for a while with this technology. Oh, I'm so bad with technology. Yeah, clearly. Right. So the first question is, have I considered writing a time travel story? So I have lots of feelings on time travel stories. Because I am an archaeologist, the time travel stories that I have read get lots of stuff wrong, and it really, really irritates me. So I'm not wild about time travel. I'm not like, you know, there's just a lot of simple things that people get wrong, from like smell to hygiene to, you know, like there's a lot of stuff that if you are a modern person in particular traveling into the past would break with reality and would need to be addressed. Language has changed completely. Just from 100 years ago. So, you know, like somebody time traveling in America to the American Old West, for example, has to learn linguistically basically what amounts to a whole new language and way of speaking and tonality. So, you know, like there are things like that I feel like time travel, just very simple things that time travel doesn't address. That would be the first problem. The second problem is the amount of research is insane to do realistic time travel, where you're actually going back to a past that actually exists. Now, if I were doing time travel in like fantasy worlds or stuff like that, that's a different thing entirely. That would probably be fun. Or time travel from the future to our modern time. That might be fun too. The sort of fish out of water, alien amongst us, stranger in a strange land idea. But I don't think that's the tenor of the question. So the answer is, to do it properly, it would require a lot of work and research on my behalf, which I'm not currently willing to do. I'd have to pick a time period that I felt extremely comfortable in and knew a lot about. And I'm just not sure I could do it justice. I've also never been inspired by a character or a plot that is a time travel. So yeah, so far for me, probably not. I don't really enjoy reading them either. I'm not a fan of the genre. So that's time travel. Heist story is a different question. So the same person also wanted to know if I would ever consider doing a heist story, and the answer is yes. I love heists. Leverage is one of my favorite television shows of all time. I even have a soft spot for like the Ocean's 13, 12, and 11 kind of franchise stuff. You know, heists are great. They're like a really good time. They're like a mystery story plotted in reverse, where I don't have to figure out how to trick my readers. I can just take them on like an adventurous, like tricksy story together. In fact, I could do a heist story with the Custard Protocol crew. They were kind of set up with those kinds of ideas in mind, right? This idea of like Rue could infiltrate, right? She can take on different supernatural creature forms. Like she's the ultimate disguise artist in a way. So, you know, the Custard Protocol kids could have a rockin' great time doing some heists if I wanted to write some heists. So heists are not out. Plus I feel like we're kind of in a golden age of like heists in fantasy, particularly epic fantasy. But, you know, I'm waiting for some great urban fantasy built on heists, you know, like Jim Butcher, but heisty. So I do think it's like totally possible, and it would be really fun. Could do heists with the San Andreas Shifters as well, you know. So yeah, so heists are definitely something I love. They're ensemble cast pieces, which I enjoy, obviously, as well. So heists are cool. But I don't necessarily have a concrete plan for one at the moment. And then somebody asked me for my favorite scary scene in a non-scary movie. I guess it's October. We're talking about scary things. I don't love scary stuff. So I'm gonna pick like my favorite absurdist scary scene, because I actually was really scared by it, but even at the time I knew how stupid it was to be scared by it. And that is and everybody will know this amongst the like 4 of you who have seen this movie, which is the fetal sheep chasing scene in the delightfully ridiculous Kiwi film Black Sheep. If you haven't seen it, it's totally worth looking up because it's absurd. I have a love of like weird, indie, obscure, dark comedy / horror comedy. So we're talking Shaun of the Dead, but like even lighter. So What We Do in the Shadows, I love that movie. There's a great, because the fashion is also good, there's a great one called Fido, which is a zombie, but is a zombie comedy. Also Cold War 1950s commentary. It's a great little movie. So I have this like tiny oeuvre of horror that I like. Generally speaking, I don't like horror at all, but I love horror comedy. So Black Sheep was like the first movie I ever saw that was in that vein. But I was really freaked out by the fetal pig. And it is possible that Lyle's collection of fetal sheep of sheep in formaldehyde and Connell getting drunk and eating them all / drinking them all. It is possible that that's an ode to Black Sheep. So there's a tiny little weird thing maybe you didn't know before. So yeah, Black Sheep is the answer to that question. And then the other question I got was, if a genie gave you 3 wishes, what would they be? And the Aladdin rules for no wishing for more wishes, no wishing for people back from the dead, and no making people fall in love. So what would my 3 wishes be? As I'm getting older and later on in life, I'm more troubled by the gray area moral quandary of this particular kind of question. But if given that the genie is not trying to trick me, so I don't have to be super careful about how I phrase this wish, I would probably wish something like heart peace or like contentment for the people that I love. I don't think happiness is a good wish, but I do think contentment is. This idea of being okay with your lot in life, whatever that lot in life might be, is something that as I've gotten older, I've gotten more interested in. So I think I would wish that for the people around me who I really love. That would be my first wish. And then I suspect my other wishes would have something to do with climate, like, you know, maybe cleaning up the oceans or climate, like, you know, stopping global warming, something like that. So like big scope wishes. They might be a little too big for a genie to handle, and those are the kinds of wishes that I would use at this point in my life. So yeah, that's not really an answer. I don't have 3 like absolute wishes. I haven't thought about this. I don't have a lot of like drunken philosophical conversations that would lead to a ready answer to that kind of question at this point in my life. But I think those are kind of the ways I would go with those questions. I don't really need anything myself. I'm fine. So I don't know that I would take those wishes for personal anything really. So yeah, so those were the questions that I had prepared. So now I am ready to answer any questions you might have. I don't really have any data yet on Embouchure Door or how the sales went. It looks like it's doing really, really well. So thank you everybody who bought it. Please think about leaving it a review if you finished it and you enjoyed it. That would be awesome. The more reviews, the better always. Whatever platform you want to review it on is great. And yeah, it's looking good. It seems people are, I know it's a little different. It's a little kind of quieter. It's a less hysterical in both senses of the word from me, less like slapsticky and stuff, less humor, but it is, I don't know, kind of a more thoughtful piece. Again, I guess the older I get, the more I explore like not only different facets of my personality and what different emotional tenors mean to me in terms of like happiness and contentment, but also how my characters are interacting. I really wanted to write a long temporal scope piece, and I haven't had that chance, so that's what Embouchure Door is. It covers a wide time frame. I rarely do that, in case you hadn't noticed in my stuff. And also I really wanted to do older protagonists. I think the idea that romantic love is the provenance of the young is something that's pretty damagingly endemic to romance in particular. So I wanted to kind of tackle that as well. So those are the 2 like background things that as a writer I was doing with Embouchure Door, but also I just really wanted to see Pilliver and Agatha kind of grow old together and figure stuff out. So that's why this book was born. But it looks like I got some questions, so I'm going to take a look and see what we got. I'm going to start with Robin's question. Do we need more drunken philosophical discussions? You know, I don't know. At my age, probably not. I do remember grand old times of drunken philosophy in my college years and in my 20s. So I support them in principle. I think it is good to explore not just philosophical but moral quandaries, like how you feel about the universe and your place in it. And I think that's definitely something that we do as humans, especially when we're younger. So I support it. But I don't know how many I really need at this point in my life. My philosophical conversations are generally around business issues and the author world and creativity and writing, and it tends to be at bars at conventions with author friends and any fans who trickle into the conversation. So that's the tenor I've gone to, but I wouldn't rule them entirely out. You never know. Ty asks, what inspired the writing style of the new book? I think I was pensive. I mean, for those of you who read Vixen Ecology, you can see I was exploring this sort of stream of consciousness style with Vixen Ecology. And I think the characters kind of lent themselves to this. So both Pilliver's this sort of grumpy, curmudgeonly character, and Agatha's this very quiet, self-effacing, backgroundy character. And I think the writing style kind of reflects their personalities, and it just came super naturally for this book. You know, whereas when you're writing a character like I was with Dimity, and I'm writing like this absurdist, you know, for this book, this sort of absurd, off to fix a vampire hive with interior decorating kind of thing, like already the premise and the character, who's this bright, bubbly, chipper character, those both things lend themselves to a different style of writing, this sort of bright, bubbly style. And this is one of the reasons I self-publish my stuff and I indie publish my stuff, so I can be a little experiment with you, and you let me. Thank you. So that's why, I guess. Editor wants to know if I have any in-person fan events scheduled yet, and the answer is no. If they happen, I imagine it will be because I've been invited to a Comic-Con next year of some kind, but I haven't had an invite yet. So those feel like the events that are most likely to start up again, I guess. It could be a smaller fan-run con. I am going to Denver next weekend for a writers conference, not a convention, a conference. And if you are a writer and a fan, I suppose I will have in-person fan stuff there. But that's a business, like a authorial business sort of event. So, but that's going to be my first in-person thing at all. But it's masks required except when eating, and negative COVID test or a proof of vaccination. So hopefully it'll be pretty safe. It's about 250 people or so, so also relatively small and low key. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that, but I think it'll be all right. So that'll be my first in-person event, but it's not technically a fan event. And due to the current situation, I decided to not try to organize like a signing or anything while I was there, because I just don't know what the situation is like outside of my local area in other cities, and I don't know what Denver's like right now, so I just didn't want to put pressure on a bookstore by asking, you know, because then they have to figure out how they're going to handle it. It just seemed really messy. But for those of you who are in Denver, don't worry. You know I get back to Denver regularly. It's turned into a place I go to every couple of years at the very least. I have so many friends there now, and also my agent is in Denver. So Doc asks, Marvel, something about Marvel being so good. Marvel What If is so good, do so good. Marvel What Ifs. Okay. Right. Sorry. Lingo is happening. Fan lingo. What about a parasol what if? Like, what if something went differently, or what if, now, are the Marvel what ifs plots? So, like, this is the way the Dark Knight plot goes, what if it went differently? Or are they what if characters? Like, if this character was not turned into a vampire, but was instead turned into a werewolf. That kind of thing. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar, Doc. I've been out of fandom for too long. But sure, I could do what ifs in the Parasolverse. I got a lot of what is to deal with first, though. Christy wants to know what the timeline is for the paperback of Ambush Orador. So for those of you who don't get the chirp, why don't you? You should. But if you don't, essentially, The digital release of Ambusher Door has happened. That was October 1st. The first in-print release of that book will be as part of an omnibus collection from Subterranean, the same people who do these. It will look very like this. It will be the same size and kind of gilt cameo style, so it will match both this and fan service. And it's called Delightfully Deadly. So that will have all 3 Delightfully Deadly books, including Ambusher Door, and it will be Ambusher Door in print for the first time. Those are all signed. They're up for pre-order now. They might be sold out. I haven't asked recently, but they do tend to sell out relatively quickly. That's going to come out in February. For those of you who don't know, but I think probably all of you do, there's a lot of issues right now with book production, like just physical book production in terms of distribution and getting paper. There's backlogs at the printing presses. We're not getting any paper because paper comes from China, among other things. So or most of it does. There's just a lot of issues with printed books right now. So they're not giving a firm date on February, but they are going to try and get it out in February. So that will be the first time Ambusher Door is in print. The paperback of Ambusher Door is going to come out after that. So I don't know is the answer. So, and that has to do with just my production schedule. So right now I have 1 special project and 2 books that are essentially ready to go. One of which is a reboot re-release. And then I'm working on a trilogy, of which I'm halfway through. So, none of those are Parasolvers, so don't get, overly whatever about it. They're all science fiction. They're all in the Tinkered Stars universe. So, so that's essentially sort of 5 projects that I have to try that are gonna be finished, within the next 3 or 4 months, that I then have to decide what I want to do with them, how I want to distribute them. I have to get cover art for them. I've lost my cover art designer. It's a good thing. She went on to greater and better things, but it means I'm working with a new cover art designer, so I don't know what that style is going to be like. There's a lot of stuff going on. So 5 from me, 1 special project, probably a couple of bundles in there. Then I'm also occasionally doing major presentations for the Heroine's Journey. And so slotting in for the print edition just means not muddying those waters, basically. So I know that was heavily production end of things. I'm sorry, but it should be a good thing. There's other stuff coming. That's what that means. But yeah, so because that cover is from Starla, I need to liaise with her to get her to do the print edition cover because she has all the assets for the cover, and so she's on a different timeline too. So it's just kind of complicated at this juncture. So I was waiting to upload the assets until the digital edition had come out so I could collect all the errors. I've mostly collected all the errors so that when I do the print edition, it's as error-free as possible, last minute typos and those sorts of fixes. Because it's easy to do fixes for digital editions and really hard to do fixes for print editions and expensive. So, so when you do get the paperback of Ambusher Door, it will be the prettiest, most pristine paperback ever because it has been through a whole other print edition and a whole digital release that allows it to get all of its corrections. So it's going to be a very, very tidy little book. But I would say, probably the earliest you can expect it is the middle of next year. That feels about right. Sorry, made you wait. Nicole asks how to get a question ahead of time for these things. Usually my assistant, when she schedules the posts that go out reminding you that these are going to happen, like into the Parasol Protectorate Facebook group or here on the Facebook page or on Twitter or whatever, she monitors those for comments and often will ask if you have any questions ahead of time. And sometimes people just know and will arbitrarily just, you can reply to a cheer up if you want, asking a question. You can drop me a calling card saying this is for a Facebook question. If you want to go to the website and do that, that's easy. If you send anything to me via the calling card feature, that's just an email that just gets bopped straight to me. So like that's your immediate access. And the only thing I'm really good at is reading email. My skill set so far as keeping up on social media is terrible. but I read my email pretty regularly. So that, yeah, drop me a calling card if you really want it. But most of the time when you see those posts that are like Facebook Live coming up, which obviously you saw because you're here, then you can leave a comment on those, and Kelly will keep an eye on them and collect them all for me. Do you have an update on the audiobook? For Embouchure Door. Yes, I signed the contract. I signed the contract? Oh boy, I hope I signed the contract. Yes, I signed the contract. And I think Emma's recording it right now. So, you know, it takes her usually around a month, sometimes a little bit more. Then Brian, my audiobook producer, has to go through it and quality check it. She has to do pickups if there are any. He has to do fixes if there are any. He has to cut it all together. He has to do the sample intros and outros, all of that sort of thing. So, you know, 2 or 3 months usually. Audio's just very slow. And then I upload it, and then sometimes Amazon for Audible drops it in 2 days, and sometimes it takes them 6 months. So, but what I will do with the audio, which I've taken to doing regularly, is offer it as a direct download. So you could own the MP3 via Gumroad on my website. So you can buy the audiobook ahead of time, completely in its entirety, own it forever, and Amazon can never take it away from you. Audible can never decide your account isn't good anymore, whatever. So yeah, if you're on the Cheer Up, that's one of the perks of my newsletter, is you get the audiobooks well ahead of time usually. It really depends on how slow Audible is being at the time to upload. But Audible and Apple are hit with the same vehicle for these books. I think probably for going forwards and with some of my other stuff, I'm probably just going to distribute those widely, or as widely as possible for audio, which is a little bit more cumbersome, but doesn't hit up with this additional delay. Audiobooks already being delayed. It's kind of annoying that they then get delayed again. So when can we expect the audiobook? What did I say? 3 months, or October, November, December, beginning of next year, we hope. Possibly earlier if things go really, really well. Generally speaking, I hunker down and try to write in the wintertime, which means when something like the audiobook comes in, I'm a little bit faster about turning it around and getting back up. I'm not traveling. I try not to go anywhere or do anything during the winter months. Robin says, I mentioned Vive releasing, the question. So over on the Parasol verse spoiler squee group, there was a big discussion about this. I mentioned Vive releasing an automaton octopus into Paris after Angelique leaves. Yes, I do. But before the second one that she releases on London in the Parasol Protectorate series. And yes, that is exactly what happens. There's a throwaway line in one of the books from Professor LeFou about Not Again, basically, when Vive releases the automaton in London. And that is the implication that she had built one and done this before. And yes, she has built one and done it before, and she did it to Paris. So it's not appeared in any of the books. I think it's loosely referenced also in Romancing the Inventor, if memory serves. I know what happened. It's not me being confused. It's in the timeline, the magical timeline that is not available online because there are too many spoilers for the Parasol verse. And when I die, someone will put it up on the internet and then it will all be clear to you. But yes, I have a huge timeline on my wall. And on it is the exact year and location and everything that Madame LeFou built her first automaton. So that's the answer to that spoilery question. Very glad that people are liking Embouchure Door. There's some nice comments. Thank you very much, everybody. Katie asks, if someone is born with excess soul, is it possible for life to beat out of them before they could survive the bite? Oh, that's a good question. Like, to have your creativity stifled? I don't know. If I needed it as a plot device, yes. How's that for an answer? But it's a cool idea. It'd make a good short story. Eddie asks. Oh, Eddie is asking about the physical. You're talking about the paperback version of Amber Door, Eddie. I answered that question already, but essentially, sometime next year, middle to the later part, probably. Boop, 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 boop. Jesse asks, do I have a plan for the next book in the Parasolverse? Any hints about which characters and when? No concrete plan, but it will probably be a Claw and Courtship book, which means it will be a human, female, and a werewolf match up, or a human and a werewolf match up. Just partly because that little mini-series only has one in it, so I would like to turn around and focus. So that means it's probably something to do with the London Pack. And the London Pack as it exists in the 1890s, so Biffy and Lyle are in charge of it. And it's located slightly outside of London, and yeah, and Faith and Channing are together, and part of that, so that would probably be next. Something in that. One of those wolves. One of them London wolves. That would be the plan, but it's going to be a little while. But it is going to happen, don't worry. Gaslight Steam Expo came back. Yay! And it was very nice. Oh, good. I'm very glad. I'm sorry I missed it. I got some gossip from Jocelyn and Glenn. Madame Askew and the Grand Arbiter kept me in the loop. I'm very sad to have missed it, but it's the way it goes. Will I be coming back? If they invite me back, I will be back in a red hot minute. I love them. Also, if I'm ever in the area for any reason and it happens to be happening, I will definitely try to come. And there's a greater chance of that happening. I have a friend who is relatively nearby who occasionally does writing retreats now. So if I might be able to persuade her to like do a writing retreat just after or just before it, so I could do a combo thing. So yeah, I would love to go back to Gaslight. Anyway, yeah, it's one of my, for those of you who don't know, this is a San Diego little steampunk convention, and it's a lot of fun. I always have a great time when I go. Emily asks, can I tell you what lipstick you're wearing? Oh, it looks fabulous. Thank you. This is this weird, it's called Pioneer, and it's this weird, it's like one of my favorite lipsticks, but it comes super cheap from Amazon as part of like a 14 lipstick sampler pack. I've worn it before. But I can't remember the name of the company. I'm so sorry. You can drop me a calling card and I'll tell you. I'm gonna give you a link. I'll try to remember to come back and give you a link. But I knew somebody was gonna ask and I just forgot it. It's in my purse. It's right over there. But I would have to leave you to go find it. I also don't have tea because I boiled the water, but I forgot to make tea. It's the story I told you at the beginning. It's honestly nothing's more discombobulating for a writer than to be without her computer. It's like I don't know what to do with my life. I was literally without my computer. For those of you who didn't hear this part of the narrative, it's the beginning. You can go back and rewatch it. But I was without my computer for basically one evening. And the number of times I was on the iPad and then I stood up to go write something on the computer and then had to sit immediately back down again because there was no computer. It was very sad and pathetic. It is my crutch. Sarah asks, will there ever be a focus on accessories other than parasols and cravats? What about spats? Well, what about gaiters? Gaiters are even better than spats. There's fans. There are quite a few accessories that play a very key role in the Finishing School series. Different accessories. Yeah, I'm mad for accessories. It ought to be purses, quite frankly, given my predilection. Or shoes. I'm going to be bringing my binder clip purse to my next event. So there'll be pictures of me with my binder clip purse, I hope, if I remember to take pictures. It's really weird to go back to a conference after years of not doing it Even though I was regularly going to conventions and conferences, like 12 a year prior to this. Suddenly I didn't for 2 years, and now I'm like, oh, I've forgotten what to pack, what to do, shoes, I have to think about shoes. So yes, accessories, very important, and quite a big deal. I'm dealing with the conference organizer. This is very funny. I find it very funny, which is a lot of me being like, yeah, but I need to know which presentations I'm doing and whether I'm standing up and lecturing like for a keynote or something, or whether I am, you know, hosting at a dinner, or whether it's a cocktail event, or whether it's like a sit down panel sort of thing, because that dictates what shoes I wear. Like, I need to know these things ahead of time so I know what to pack. Like, that's the really important thing. It's like, so could you please tell me how long that lecture is going to be? Because can I wear stilettos to walk across that stage? This is the question. If you're me, this is the important bit. Let's see, what else? I'm looking. The Gail hums while she's looking for questions. Jessie asks, might the Geraldine's teachers ever get their own books? They might. I too would love Sister Maddie, Lady Lynette's backstory. Not to mention Niall and Sid Haig. Nicole, it's like, I finally read The Heroine's Journey and I can't stop labeling. This is the symptom, a side effect of having read The Heroine's Journey is now you're like, I see it everywhere. Nicole asks, when I do a second draft, the developmental edit, do I go in chronological order or focus on the main scenes? Oh, this is interesting. I just had this conversation. So the incident that caused the computer crisis was also me having tea with 2 of my best writer buddies and our all 3 of ours mutual editor, which just happened to happen like that. So there are 4 of us having tea together, and we actually got onto this topic of like, you know, developmental edits. So very quickly, for those of you who are not writers, I'm sorry if you don't really care how the sausage is made, but I'm going to mess with your minds. Essentially, writers like me do a rough draft 1 or 2, and then we pass off maybe draft 2 or 3 to a developmental editor. And a developmental editor is also the kind of editor that you have at a traditional publishing house. So although they do more than just developmental editing, but essentially a developmental editor is interested in story structure and characterization. So they're doing kind of broad scope. The flow of the narrative, the beats of the narrative, whether the plot works, kind of that sort of thing. They are not editing for what we would call line edits, for typos and sentences and stuff like that. Most of the time a developmental editor doesn't pay attention to that sort of thing. They're just interested in making your story stronger. This is also the kind of stuff that you learn to develop with workshops with other writers in groups and that kind of thing. Now, many authors who are career authors like me, who've been in the business for 10 or more years, who have 30 plus books in their back catalog, will stop using a developmental editor, or they just don't need a developmental editor that much anymore. I keep using one. I like it. I like the developmental editing process. I like back and forthing. I like having someone else force me to switch about how I'm thinking about the story and the story structure. So I'm still one of those who loves a developmental edit. And so the way I do it is I don't ask for a deep edit. Now, the language is very different depending on who the developmental editor is and who you're working with. But because I come out of traditional and because I write relatively clean, which clean meaning I usually don't require a very heavy edit. I write with an outline. I'm not a discovery writer. So I just tend to spit books out that are pretty tight already. A couple of them have needed work, but most of the time I don't need a ton of rewriting. That's just not the kind of writer that I am. And so most of the time for me, a developmental edit is like 2 to 5 pages of notes which is not a lot, frankly. They're sort of bulleted notes. Sometimes they're sort of broad scope notes. Sue, my current developmental editor, Sue Brown-Moore, I recommend her highly. She and I have kind of comfortably, she gives me, you know, kind of a couple paragraphs of like broad scope stuff, some specific scenes. She'll leave some comments in the Word document in the margins about specific scenes that she thinks might need more or less work. And then some character stuff. She'll just be like, this character is kind of a little throwaway, doesn't have depth. These two are being confused with each other. This character is more in the foreground, this character is more in the background. You might want to balance them out when I'm, you know, like the San Andreas books or something, if it's two flipped POV main characters. So that's the kind of thing she gives me. So I take all of her notes, and this is just the technique I developed from working with traditional editors in my publishing houses, so with Orbit and with Little Brown, is I take all of those notes and I bullet them. So editors write these notes to us, to the authors, knowing that we have very fragile egos. And so they're very careful with their language and nice and kind about it. And I immediately don't need that. I need action items. I need to know what I have to do to fix the story as quickly and efficiently as possible. So I go in and so I save their edit letter, and then I reopen the edit letter as a new document, and then I just I edit the edit letter. So I go in and turn everything into bullet point action items. Like, I need to do this, I need and then I divide those action items into universals, so things like threads or characters that, character personality traits or something that I'm gonna have to fix throughout the whole book. Those are the hardest ones to deal with. And then anything that falls in the first third of the book, anything that falls in the middle section of the book, and anything, so scenes I need to fix, plot points I need to deal with that are basically at the beginning, basically in the middle, and basically at the end. And then I tend to go in and do the easy fixes first, and easy is just what I personally find easy as a writer. That'll be like name changes, you know, find things that can be find and replace, stuff that it's like the action or the description in this scene isn't working, and I just need to fix that one small section. And that's just satisfaction, so I can cross as many things off of my list as possible. So I do all of that. And then I'm left with usually about a page of revisions that I'm just gonna have to read through the whole book and tackle them, and I tackle them chronologically in the book. I tend to try to do all of my passes and rereads and fixes and everything from beginning to end, because that's how you, the reader, are going to absorb it. So I want to make it as smooth and easy for you to read and consume as possible. And for me, that means editing it in the same kind of way that you would read it. So yeah, so that's the developmental pass. So that's why the developmental pass takes a long time. It usually takes several months for me to do a dev pass. And then after that, I usually will, because the dev paths can be kind of choppy and I have made certain fixes, I do want to do another read through, another flow pass. So that's when I usually do my audio pass. So I'll read through the book out loud, the whole thing, to an empty room. That's just because if I'm listening to something, I catch errors differently than if I'm just reading it silently to myself. So I'll do that. Then I'll usually pass it off to beta readers, especially if it's a Parasolverse book. I like to kit up the beta readers earlier on. So they are there to catch continuity mistakes, in-world continuity mistakes between books and stuff like that. They usually do. They're great. My beta readers are amazing. And then sometimes I'll do a visual font pass, so I'll change the font of the entire document into one that I don't like. Like, you know, like if I tend to work in serif font, so I might change it to a sans serif font. And again, that allows me to catch more mistakes for that read through. Generally speaking, a book that has published out into the world like Ambush or Adore has been through at least 6 passes, editorial passes of some kind or another. That is how a book is born. Silence while Gail looks. Am I going to be in Worldcon in DC? I'm not. They moved it to the end of the year, and like I said, I really don't like to travel at the end of the year. I just don't like to fly or travel during the holiday season, period. It's just too chaotic. There are too many people who don't travel traveling. It messes with my mojo. It makes me very anxious. So So yeah, they just moved it to a time of year that I'm not wild about, so I'm not going to be going. Sorry, everybody. I know I was going to, but now I'm not. It's just, it's also, there was so much like gossip and drama with the organizers and stuff. I just sort of lost it. Jocelyn is explaining what ifs are, but that question is now in the past. Oda asks, any idea, or I'm sorry, Oda, if I pronounced your name wrong. I am terrible at that. Any idea when another Clown Courtship supernatural story will come? Well, it'll be at least a year, if not 2. So you'll have to be patient. I have other fish to fry. I have other aliens to skewer. Sounds like the writing machinery is back up and running again. Yes, it is. I think you'll find my authorial voice is a little tonally different, but it is still breezy and fun, but it's slightly less slapstickery and humorous, and that might just be these books. I might rediscover that part of me again, but it's not as pensive or as winsome as like Ambassador was with these ones. But yes, the machinery is back up and running in a big way. I'm loving the current series I'm working on, which is the 3-book trilogy, is really fun for me. I'm having a great time with it. It's real conceptual. It's hard sci-fi, but it is a social science version of hard sci-fi. So I'm exploring, culture conflict and that sort of thing with aliens, and it's great. And I think the main character people will love, and the love interest people will love. It's not really a romance. It's way more of an adventure story. Although there's a romantic thread, of course, but really it's super found family. Like it's all about the group that they put together, because it's about a band, essentially, a literal band, a musical group. So yeah, of aliens. It's really fun. So I think you'll be excited. But yes, it is definitely. The machinery seems to be up and running. For those of you who don't know, during the Great Quar, I rather lost my mojo for a while. Also, all of the people in my life who were very ill, or most of the people in my life, I talk about this in the Chirp a little bit, but like pretty much everybody around me got sick for a while there, and not with COVID, just with other kinds of sickness. And I'm sort of like primary care, not emotional support. I'm like practical support for a lot of people. Like I'm like, if it's not my crisis, I'm pretty good in a crisis. So I get called in to like take you to hospital and deal with the medical system and all that sort of thing, which is fine. Absolutely. That's like, I understand my role. If you want to sob on the couch for 3 hours about your breakup, like I'm not your girl, but if you need somebody to pick you up at 2 o'clock in the morning because you've run out of gasoline, that would be me. So so there was a lot of 2 a.m. gasoline runs for the last 8 months or so. And that just tapped me out. And it turned out that also affects my creativity. I think I'm an introvert, so I tend to devalue social interactions. But I honestly think that those also I do devalue them because I think they do also add to my creativity. So not going to conventions and seeing you, not going to conventions and seeing my author friends and having conversations with them, it really affected me more than I thought it would in terms of my ability to write quickly, but also to be happy while writing. And so that also impacted, but I seem to be getting my mojo back, which is great because it means you'll get more books. Stacey wants to know if these are a Tris book. No, this is not a Tris book. None of these are Tris books, but they're all in the Tinkered Stars world. They're all the Tris adjacent. And no, he doesn't show up in any of them either. It's a whole galaxy that I'm exploring, so. Nicole wants to know advice when looking for cover artists. I actually have some really good advice because I just took it myself, which is when you're looking for a new cover artist, and if you go into I will go into indie authors groups and just ask, anybody have a cover artist that they love, who they enjoy working with, who's responsive? Because I want somebody, I don't mind if I have to get in line and it's going to be a couple months before I get the cover, but I do mind if I have to wait 5 days for an email response to a query. So So that's the first thing I do, and then I tend to just come up with a list of most cover artists will have a website, a decent website, and it should be a good website because they're cover artists, they're designers. That website should be designed. That's the first test. Is their website good? Is it aesthetically pleasing? And then the first thing I do is I look at ready-made covers. Most digital manipulators in particular will have ready-mades. And the ready-made cover gallery is not the cover gallery of books, of covers that they have done for authors, although that can be useful. The ready-made gallery is real insight into their taste. So you look at the ready-made covers that an artist has done, and you will learn what they lean on color-wise, what fonts they really like, what design elements they gravitate towards, central figures, feminine figures, urban fantasy, darker covers, all of those sorts of things. Look at those ready-mades because that's their voice as artists, much as we writers have our voice. You want to see, and then see if that voice matches yours. So I do so much and I'm planning to do so much in so many different genres. I was really looking for a cover art designer who could handle a real range. So who showed me YA as it is now, plus some of the more traditional covers, who showed me women's fiction style, who showed me urban fantasy, high fantasy, deep fantasy, sci-fi, like all of that. Like I wanted to see what their range was like. And for me, because I keep a very close eye on the trends in cover art design, I don't always like them, but I keep an eye on the trends, which means what traditional publishing is doing and then what indie is kind of picking up and running with. I wanted to see if these designers also had a handle on the trends. So if they showed range. Now that's me, because I am prepared to like shift about a bit. So yeah, those are some of the things I would look at. But my biggest tip when you're shopping is, you know, like ask around, ask an author whose cover you like, who they use. Most authors are really happy to recommend their cover art designers. And then, but also then look at the gallery, look at the ready-mades gallery for any cover art designer, because that will give you real insight into what kind of designer they are, but also what they like. You know, writers talk about the fact that we have writer's tics. So we have phrases that we lean on, we have character archetypes that we lean on, we have plot points that we lean on, we have narrative devices that we tend to reuse constantly. Sometimes that contributes to our voice, and it's what you guys like when you're reading us. But I think visual designers also have tics. They have things that they like, elements that they enjoy. And you just want to realize that that's there when you're shopping for a new visual artist. Will Sophronia get a delightfully deadly book? No, she will not. That was an easy question. My main character is almost, Alexia got a short story, but generally speaking, I don't pick up a main character ever again for contract reasons, but various other things as well. Not strictly contract, but sort of contract. But Sophronia shows up in the sidelines all the time. Pumpkin spiced chai, yay or nay? I don't like sweet drinks. So, I don't like sweet chai. So yeah. My problem with pumpkin spice is not pumpkin spice, because I love cinnamon and nutmeg and all of those delightful things. My problem is that it is so sweet, and I don't drink my calories. I like to eat my calories. So I just don't drink sweet drinks, period. I don't drink soda or anything like that. Does that mean you... Oh, Lavender. Oh, that's an interesting question, Lavender. Lavender wants to know whether I will Terry Pratchett my hard drive when I pass on. So those of you who don't know, God, I'm using that phrase a lot this live. Terry Pratchett had a bulldozer run over his hard drive of all of his unfinished projects when he died. And no, I'm not going to do that. I don't care. If I'm dead, I don't care. So I'm happy to have my IP lapse. Everything will eventually lapse after I die as an author, and then anybody can pick up and run with my universe. I hope that any inheritors that I have will not be litigious about it. I don't think that's not something I care particularly about. I mean, I have to be litigious about it right now as an IP owner, just because, you know, trademark is a crazy area and you have to protect your trademark or you lose it. So, unfortunately, that's the world I live in, but when I'm dead, I don't care. So yeah, most creatives who have a will, and you should, of course, if you're a creative and you have any kind of IP, which is intellectual property, have what's called a creative executor, which is somebody, so you have a regular executor of your will, and then there's a creative executor, and a creative executor is responsible for doing things with the stuff that isn't finished. So, and me being me, there'll always be something, I assume. So yeah, I have a creative executor who will figure out how to finish things. And that's, you know, finding an author who's similar enough to my style to finish it out, to making sure that any projects that are in the process of being published complete that process. So yes, after I die, there will be more books coming out until there are no more books that I've started or stopped or what have you. And then presumably there will be a hiatus, and then there will be, hopefully, anybody who wants to writing in my universe. But that's, you know, a long way away. We'll all probably be dead by then. Eddie wants to know if the trilogy is the techno fantasy, and says that they are very excited for the techno fantasy, which is good, but no. The trilogy is called the Tinkered Starsong trilogy, and it is basically aliens are taking over the galaxy using an artistic, immersive experience, which is a musical experience, but it's a transportive, euphoric music. So, and it is about a barista from an obscure tiny moon who is recruited to be one of their singers, and they're called gods. He's recruited to be one of the gods, and then has to decide whether the thing he's participating in is good or bad or not, and how he feels about the experience. And of course, he's a brand new baby god, and he falls in love with a major god, an established celebrity star in the pantheon of gods. So yeah, so that's the trilogy I'm working on. That's the Tinkered Starsong, and I've just said more than I should, but look at the rewards you get for tuning into a live. Speaking of, what time is it? We're probably winding up. Oh, we should be winding up. All right, it's rapid fire question time. Here we go. Don't anybody ask any more questions. Let's see how fast we can go through these. Are we going to have another in the romancing series? Not at the moment, possibly in the future. That's the Romancing the Werewolf, Romancing the Inventor series. That's the Supernatural Society series, so possibly. Oh, this top. Thank you very much. Thank you. I invested in a couple of tops that just look cute for video, because I've been doing so much Zoom video and stuff like that. And, you know, so this portion is very important. I should have worn earrings, but I forgot. When will the next SAS be released? Again, it's going to be a couple of years. It'll be the Dratzi Dilemma. There's just been some problems with that. Losing the cover artist, losing the narrator, a bunch of other things. So, like, it's just, you know, Dratzi Dilemma will happen. I have notes for it. It's going to happen. Don't worry about it. It's just going to be a little while. We're going all sci-fi for a bit, everybody. I hope you're with me. I promise it will be enjoyable and fun and exciting and silly and ridiculous and great. Oh, is it vintage? No, this is not vintage. This is cheapy. Cheapy wazoo. It's just, what's it called? Shein, I think is the name of it. But it is cool. Buy a size up if you go looking for it. I'm normally a medium. I had to buy a large. When did the character of Lord Akaldoma develop? Before or after Alexia? After Alexia. But he's based on, like, various aunties from my childhood, since I grew up in San Francisco in the 1980s. I know, I forgot to make tea. It's a catastrophe. Moving on. Embouchure Adore. Agatha's wardrobe is extensive. Do I have a Pinterest board for her? Yes. I don't know if I have. It's full of... there are definitely a bunch of dresses in there, but yeah, if you go onto Pinterest, I think I put all of the Parasolver's characters are now in one board, and then it's subdivided into all the different characters, so you can check out Agatha's board on my Pinterest and see all the things, all the pretty dresses, or not so pretty dresses in her case, since her taste is for practical reasons, for reasons of subversion rather than style. Lumder says, may I suggest a certain podcast called 20-minute delay. Yes, that is my podcast. For those of you who don't know, I have a travel podcast called 20-Minute Delay. We haven't traveled very much recently, so it's been a little sporadic, but we're both kicking it back in again, so we should have a couple new casts coming along. But yes, check that out. Any advice for going to writers' conferences if you're not presenting? Ask questions. If you are going to a writers' conference and you have questions that for writers and editors or whatever, ask them about it. We are there to help you. We're not there to necessarily be your personal mentor, but like when I do a writers' conference, I am there with 12 years of experience in the publishing industry as an author. Like, I have been through the ringer. I have done contracts and cut deals all over the spectrum, you know, from Hollywood to graphic adaptations to like all the things. So like, I am a wealth of knowledge, but I have no idea what you need from me. So you have to ask questions. So if you're going to go to a writer's conference, ask a question. If an author is there, like at the bar, standing around, this is at a conference. A fan convention is different. But if this is a conference, you should feel absolutely comfortable going up to them and being like, I don't mean to disturb you. Do you have a minute? Can I buy you a drink and pick your brain about audiobooks, whatever it is you have questions about. Like, I love helping people in that way, and I think most authors who do conferences of this kind, you know, smaller conferences with keynote addresses and workshops and that sort of thing, we want to help. Like, what good are we if we can't pass our knowledge on to the next generation, right? Like, but also, we all know so much that we don't know what you need from us. So, figuring out what you need is the way you get the most out of one of these conferences. The travel burrito holder. Is there a specialist travel burrito holder? Because I want it. I want to know it. I want a link to it. You must share this information with me immediately. Did Gail cause Facebook's crashing? Yes, I spilled tea on my computer and crashed Facebook. Please perpetuate this myth. I think would be great. Gail brought down Facebook with an accidental tea spill. Any fall winter plans? Robert asks, yes, I'm going to a conference next weekend. It's a writer's conference that I'm teaching. I'm teaching Heroine's Journey, and I'm available for questions. It's in Denver. And I have a couple of online events, but nothing major for the fall winter because I don't like traveling in this season. So I try to not travel until, you know, March of next year. Will there be more of Spoo? There could be more of Spoo. I don't rule out Spoo. Spoo's great. I would love... Kimberly asks, where have I dug? Syria, northern Italy, Andes Mountains near Cusco, Pacific Southwest, Four Corners region, North America, southern England, northern England. I think that's it. And then I've studied stuff from Egypt and a couple other places as well. That's about right. That was a rando question. You can look, I have a section on my website that's like the massive FAQ, the never-ending interview, and there's a whole section about archaeology where I talk about some of the sites I worked on and stuff like that. Will there be a Terra prequel? If you mean about Alessandro Terabody, probably at some point. But he's an anti-hero, so I struggle, and he has a sad ending, so I'm a little struggly about how I would approach that series, but I would love to write some Alessandro stuff at some point. Series in the 1920s. I don't like the fashion, so probably wouldn't write in the 1920s. Also, it's post-World War I. I get uncomfortable with everything once mass death and mass, World War I makes me uncomfortable. So I would probably stay in that universe. In the Parasolverse, I'd probably stay before World War I. Oh, Zenobia. That would be really fun. Someday I would love to write kind of clock punk and super early, way back steampunk set in like ancient Greek times, ancient Egyptian times. That would be really fun. I have some learning in that area and part of the world. So I wouldn't rule it out. Womp womp, says Ty. I don't know what that's about, but womp womp to you too. Looks like we're done with the questions, which, whew, boy, I'm sorry if I missed your question. Oh, Sarah has another one. Zenobia, we got that one. Hopefully I got them all. If I missed one, I'll come back later, and I'll type you an answer. I'm very glad, Lavender, that you're excited about the Tinker Stars. I think it's really gonna be great. Well, I mean, I'm halfway through it, so I'm in the euphoric, I love the series state. I'm always like this with books. But please notice how much I love you that I am writing all 3 of them, that I am writing a series again, which a lot of you requested from me. I've done quite a few standalones. I mean, the novellas are sort of technically series, but not really. They're designed for you to be able to pick up a book and not have read the first or the second one or whatever. But this series, the Tinker Star Song series, is, and that is the name, that is not the title. So don't go listing this on Goodreads. That is just the series name. It is 3 books. They are linked one after another. So, and it's because you asked for it. It's your fault. But that's one of the reasons I'm taking time to write all of them back to back, because flow-wise, I think it works better for me personally as a writer. And that's lessons I learned from writing the Finishing School and the Custard Protocol books. What is the best way to contact me about inviting me to come speak at a library association? Calling card feature on my website. Email. Or if you belong to the Chirrup, you can just reply to the Chirrup. That goes into the same pool. And I check my spam filters. I check these things regularly. Don't worry, you will reach me. My fabulous assistant Kelly is also really good about finding and responding to things. So there are jokes about Lord Akeldama rubbing people with pumpkin spice, which is getting a little racy, everybody. But that's probably a good sign that we should stop the live. So it has been glorious and wonderful talking to you all. I hope if you haven't picked up Embouchure Door that you will give it a try. It is something a little different from me, but so far people seem to really be enjoying it. Please review it if you can. And yeah, expect some fun stuff coming up. The next thing is gonna be the special edition of Delightfully Deadly that includes Embouchure Door, but soon in the Chirrup I should have more information. Right now, like I said, I'm just working with cover art, so once I have cover art and I know, then I can tell you what the next book coming out will be. But it will be a sci-fi, the next one that's coming. It's either techno-fantasy or sci-fi. So I hope you're excited about it, but the Chirrup will know. And I will tell you, I promise. Meanwhile, it's October. I hope you all have wonderful falls, whatever your autumn takes. And yes, enjoy the spiced chai, this pumpkin spice if that's your thing, the pumpkin pie if that's your thing. That'd be me. I love some pumpkin pie. And yeah, I'll see you in November. It's gonna be Nano. Let me know if you're gonna do Nano. And so I'll probably be talking a bit more about the craft of writing in the next one. So, bye-bye, everybody. Take care.